Here we are again, another broadcast, and I trust that you had a good week, and looking forward to this. I know you had an exciting listening or viewing, I should say, and I too really enjoyed what presented. So I trust we can continue this conversation, and we want to continue looking at this. What I was then and now. That is important for where we're going. And as we said last broadcast, the whole context of the histories that are not just past, but they're very present to future, because they are affecting where we're going and how we are going. And I want us to be very mindful, very mindful of how we are interpreting the way forward. And as I said, it's important to look at those values and to see it's not just a thing, and to argue or don't do it this way, but go back and ask, what significance is this for you and for your family? Because I think I may have been, guilty of some of that thing, of behaving very ignorantly when we go into some places, and especially that coming into a new family through marriage, and recognizing that they have these values that you say, but why all this? Especially when we come to traditions, and I can name one of it, Christmas, when there's so many values coming out of the past and getting that harm and preparing the home and where those histories come from and what they meant. And I think we have really not been honest in identifying and relating to those histories, and somehow we find that it's all different. So that I really want for you to go back, and I'm going to go back again and look more about that, and maybe in September, say we can revisit this conversation and see what comes out of that. But I want to go a little further today and talk about sexuality and understand that also in terms of the value, and look at the whole gender perspective, because and of course, once we're looking at gender, we are looking at functionality. It's not just about male and female. It's about how do we define what is our function and what's that. Now, again, we are looking at some modalities here that are real to us in terms of where we have come from. And akin to this is a subject I want to broach maybe sometime in the next maybe 2 or 3 broadcasts. But I want to step a little bit here in terms of our spirituality. And I think it's important, because when we are talking about humanity and who we are, there is an origin. And some of us have that kind of interpretation in terms of philosophies of how we got here. And for me, as a believer, I have believed in the Holy Scriptures and understand that I was created in His image and likeness, male and female created He them, and so that, and my parents taught me that, and their parents and their parents, and so it's an ancestral context of bringing these particular doctrines, and you now defining your belief system in the Scriptures that continues to forge and form your identities and how you interpret the way forward for you as an individual. And so it's important for me to realize that not everybody is going to have the same belief system, so that you have to look and to discuss the realities of belief systems and where are these origins based, and how do we define the way forward, because every religion perspective of interpretation, everybody is right about it, and nobody's going to say that it is wrong and I don't believe it and you should be. But you see, we have to look at all this and find a groundatory context as to defining what this is, not just deciding it is, but understanding there is a base, but how does it bring the revelation of? And so that it's important for me to understand that context of sexuality, coming out of male and female, coming out of the context of the male establishing himself as a leader, and the female as a co-leader. Oh my gosh, I could see faces going, co? Is that subservient? No, it's attached. Very cool. It's not assistant. It's co. As a female, being a helpmeet. Now, from my perspective, in terms of helpmeet, how do I see this from a sociological perspective? And that brings out a particular culture and a dimension of civilization. Now, in the past, you realize that most of the cultures or that we would have, we can identify with whatever country you want to call it, whether it's Africa, whether it's Asia, China, anywhere, whether it was indigenous peoples, there is always that context of what role the females had and the males. It was always very clear. And so that with the migration, notice this, or the transmigration of slaves and indented laborers coming here, they came with their religions, and they all had a very strong perspective of sexuality, of understanding male and female, of understanding the fact that there were particular necessary identities here in that maleness and that femininity that would establish function. And we have to see that even in terms of slavery, in terms of being a servant, it was always about how do we interpret. Now, this context of giving. Now, even though there were a lot of cultures had male servants, there was still a context of what the female represented. And so she would have had a function, and he would have had a function. And so it's important for us as we go on, coming into our own, we must recognize where we have come from and with what teachings. And that's why I suggest that the old history of spirituality and religion is important for us to speak in here, in this place, right here, so that we can begin to identify how we're going forward with this conversation and how we are going to develop its meaningfulness to bring some perspective of activity. Because you see, we don't want to just say, okay, men do this, women do that. Who said so? Why? Where did this come from? How did this come from? How did this emerge in your mind as what is masculinity and what is femininity? And so therefore, again, all that came out of function. So that even though we can identify the body mass in terms of different identities there with genitals and breasts and facial hairs, etc., that is one thing that is there. But that was not the essence of what made the context of that sexuality context, where there's maleness and the female and the male, because it has to do with the function now. What were they doing? How were they doing? How will you establish? And there are priorities in terms of what we will again believe to bring us into this issue of identity. So as we go forward, how do you establish what is to be said or not said? What is to be done or not done? How it's going to be done? How it's not going to be done? And all these things have varying interpretations throughout our histories, which have affected the meaningfulness of our living and what it represents to us as identities. So today, we come into a relationship understanding, yes, male and female. We're going to have children. One of the things we look at is names. So we identify them names, and we establish that that name has a particular. But of course, in some cultures, some of the names that we do have for males are the same for females. They are spelled the same way, they pronounced the same way. But that was the name. But you still have to define the person as it pertains to their gender in terms of their sex. And that is what we need to look at. How do we interpret this with sex? How do we establish what that is? Are we born? Are we not born with that? In terms of that is male and that is female. That establishes sex, which therefore informs the sexuality in terms of our function. Now, Dr. Knight, why are we talking about this today? See, in terms of when we were looking at conflicts, and we're looking at the whole issue of how to interpret the conflict through collaboration, through avoidance, and we looked at maybe the issue of accommodate and compromise. All of those issues of conflict has to do with how we interpret function. What and you do. It's always a do from a say. So, what did you say that made you do? Or why did you do that without saying? And you didn't tell me. So, there's a lot of what continuously is happening to us in terms of conflict has to do how we define our function. For me, of course, I can see from biblical perspectives that it was about the function. Eve tried to re-establish a function differently from that which as the helpmeet, and was influenced by this third party called Lucifer or Satan, and it was influenced to re-establish what the function was in terms of what I should do and what I should not do. So you could eat up all these fruit here, but except this one, but I am now being challenged to do something differently. So you see, it comes back to that doing. And of course, so that we all had our very specific doings, that today, that is always an issue of what makes you who you are by the doings. And how do we define, therefore, in terms of our continuity, the differences of that meaning, or those meanings, that establishes the differences in our doings. Now, coming through the ages, they were very specific in terms of dress, in terms of identities, in terms of commonalities, in terms of function. So that we grew up saying that the boys would do this, the girls would do that, the men would do that, the women would do that. Not realizing that some of those things that were being done could have been also done by the other side, the other context, so that the femininity is no longer sociologically and psychologically crafted in what pertained in our histories. So we have to go back again and redefine that functionality issue in terms of our history. How do we work out that? How do we work out what it is that we're saying that we want to achieve? I go back to the issue of conflict. When we decided we talked about conflict, and there is conflict here about what should be done. And of course, when we get a family with children, we are going to encourage this conflict by what we tell them and how we tell them. So that it's important for us to define. Now, remember, we are faced with a lot of interpretations today about sexuality. We are faced with a lot of interpretations about function. And I dare say we are not aligning them. Because no matter what, there is going to be the context of could you push aside? Could you help me? I can't carry this. I can't do this. Could you do it? Because the male can, the female can't. The male is appropriate, the female is not. Yet we want a particular context of equality. But yet we are not ready to sit down and reassess all these things that we do in context of maybe our own familiarities. Should I use that word? Because you see, we are still struggling with washing ways, or cleaning the house, or shopping, or cooking. Yes, because who's to do it? I'm not. That's not for me. Clean the yard, scrub the car, clean the cars, put on the tires. We still have a construct in our brain as to what our histories has informed us, even though we want to have a liberal context of diversity and equity. But yet there is to be treated as in a particular dimension. We have to attempt to lessen the confusion within our societies as to the movements and the activities of our peoples, where we are struggling to define the do. And we have to come back to really put it in the place where, we are here to support each other. And that's why I like the Bible that says Eve was created as a helpmeet, not for us to just do it, so that the man who was the doer has help. Now that help is not like a slave help. And I use that phrase, that's my own little coin phrase there, where I give you a chore to do. No, it's about an assistant to bring about the reality of the task and to make the task lighter in terms of the fluidity in terms of how it is being accessed, in the way in how it's being maneuvered, so that I am not alone as a male doing this thing laboriously and wondering if it's going to work. When you, as a female, have ideas, have a support system to make it work. It is not about the fact that I am the head making you do the next thing, or whatever however you want to see the female. No, it is not about me superseding or you being subservient to me. No, it's about us working together to establish the way forward. And that is what the whole thing about sexuality is, in terms of finding that mesh and that collaboration that brings us into a oneness. And that's why we have that scripture there about we one flesh. It's all about defining a support system that carries us into our future and helps us to work it. And I dare say that what's been happening in homes that we call conflict is when we are coming against each other's principles rather than supporting the way forward. So I make a position where I am that. I am this. You are that. You're this. Yes, we can be a that and a this, but we are all this and that, because we all have to come into that context of one and of another and working that of another, because do remember, it was one man, but out of him came the other. And I think we need to really visit that squarely. As a people, we are connected from out of, bone of bone. So wherever you are, and I'm saying this candidly, whatever you want to believe in terms of your religion, for me, your creation has come out of. So therefore, there's a need to get back there. And that's what marriage is, to get back there, to find that unit that is really functional and brings progress and productivity within our societies. So we cannot just sit back here and say, let's divide down the middle. This is yours and that's yours. No, we have to see how we can support each other's skills and talents and each other's intellectualism to go forward in our life. Let's put it simply, in our life. So we have to appreciate the differences in terms of our sexuality, in terms of masculinity, femininity. And those differences are unique in terms of how we interpret the whole emotion to bring about the task. Because we are not robots. And I dare say, it seems that we are getting down to that robotic context where everything is being taken away from our very brain, our humanity, our craft, our skills. We have to safeguard that context of that unity, that togetherness in which takes us forward. So we are talking about the differences, yes, but we are not talking about the differences as to be antagonistic with the difference. But we are seeing the difference as a means of finding another way to define strength to go forward. So that where I might find a weakness, there is a strength in my wife that helps me to find that strength. And so it's the simple thing about moving a chair. I could take a long time to move one chair, but if I have support, it moves quicker. It lessens the weight. It rather redistributes the weight, I should say. So we have to see in the value again, in defining humanity, in defining sexuality, and understanding it is not for us to try to divide and rule. It's not for us to have some kind of dynasty, superiority. No, it's for us to come into the place where we are remembering we are of each other. We remember that we have skills and talents, and we are here to support each other. This context of sexuality is not just a matter of humanity. It works in businesses. It works wherever there's people, human resource. Because the whole hierarchy, there's a manager, there's a middle management, there's the people below. Everybody needs to see it. It's not that I am below, but the manager needs to understand that you too could get help, because there's that context of bringing togetherness in terms of where we are going. And that comes back to function. So when we are discussing the fact, here, this is function, where we are discussing the progress and the productivity of a company, we need to look at the whole, every member of that company. Sometimes we get top heavy, bottom up or top down and bottom up. When the managerial or the leadership tends to feel that I am in control, and so therefore you dictate and you stress the people below, and they can't function, and you exact of them because they're not functioning. Because see, we haven't come to the place where we can identify the fact that we all are in this together to make it work. We have to learn to make it work. So I'm here today to talk to really help you to see that working out the whole issue of conflict again, it's about identifying that context that we are of each other, and we are here supporting, help meet. So therefore, whether you are a parent, you have to learn that it is not just about the parent creating that system and dictating that there's a subsystem that needs to be a part of the system called children, and therefore we work together so that they have ideas. We come to the office and we recognize that we will the manager or the CEO, but you cannot function by yourself, because if you're the CEO only, there is no organization. You need every strata, you need every employee to make it work, because we are supporting each other, and that creates the whole context of working out that issue of equity and inclusivity. So we won't see ourselves outside of each other and wrangling for pay and wrangling for identity and respect and all those words to use. No, we are working together. If we could harness this thought from the very foundation of the home, we will affect our communities, from education community, from national, from the business community, every community, even religious communities. We will see the need of how we, but we poise ourselves in a position to come against. I'm different from. Watch it. Hold on. How do I help you or you help? What you are interested in, is that profitable for? Transparency. One flesh. Naked. Not ashamed. So we need to establish that kind of relationship as we go forward. So as I want you to think about this, it's not just about genitals. It's not just about male and female in terms of being man and woman. Yes, that's important. Yes, that's fundamental. But the issue of us working together, supporting each other in our functions, and making it viable for productivity, for progress. Progress? Yes. And for the availability of distribution of services that makes us affordable within our nation, within our villages, within our communities, within our homes. So I trust that you'll be able to redefine differences and work with them in terms of where we are going. As I said, if we cannot find the progress, we have to sit. It's not like you don't just go jumping about and say, let me go. We have to have conversations and have meaning and come to that place where we sensibly, intelligently, intellectually bring meaning to our future. If there's no meaning, we can't go forward. Or we have to keep conversing, and we have to help each other come into that understanding that we were created for each other's sake. Amen. Dr. Nayak saying, Have a good week. See you, hear you, or you will hear me, sorry. Do remember to put something in the comments. Do remember to put a note. I'm very interested in what you have to say and what you think about our broadcast. Again, thank you for listening. Tune in. God bless you.